affordable master planning thing. Since I don't think there's any 1970s Audubon leadership here in the room or online, I'll be honest to say these were cookie cutters. I've worked at a bunch of nature centers. I've seen probably 20 Audubon Nature Center master plans. They all are the same. Insert name here, insert acreage there, things. Everybody was told to get bison and elk. Fortunately, we only got bison. They were working on elk and it fell through. Thank you, Lord. If you've ever worked with elk, bison, we know they can go running right through our fences. Elk know that they can run right through our fences. The bison don't. So I am so happy every day we don't have elk. So the 1973 master plan recommended that we get bison. So on November 9th, 1973, what? 50 years and 11 days ago, and I could figure out the hours because they showed up about 2:30 in the afternoon. We got bison. We got 3 animals given to us by Wichita Mountains Wildlife Refuge. And we'll get to that in a minute. But why are we supposed to have bison? Education, conservation, all those kind of things were all a part of it. But it wasn't until 2006 where the bison community nationwide, actually worldwide, got together and developed this list of potential reasons to have a bison herd. There's 4. The exhibit herd. Well, we exhibit bison, so we have an exhibit herd. There's a production herd. Many people have bison so they can produce meat, hides, wool, calves, bones for the pet industry, all kinds of things like that. We don't do that. We produce some calves. Did we like it when we have calves? Do we force the issue and try to have calves? Do we play the, Tinder for bison and trying to match up? No, we don't do that. That's all just bonus if we have them. Conservation herd, conserving the species. You got to remember back in 1973 when these animals came rolling in, bison were still considered endangered. And so, and in fact, the Endangered Species Act was new. But today they're totally non-threatened. We'll never lose the bison species. We may lose the bison mystique if you watch the Ken Burns thing, which, by the way, great documentary if you haven't seen it. I love Ken Burns stuff. It's lengthy, but I will say it takes the dark side of everything compared to a lot of his other documentaries, but still worth watching. You'll learn stuff. But conservation of the species today really is referring to maintaining the genetics. Ecological herd is those that are used for land management purposes to serve the ecological purpose that bison evolved to serve, to fill that niche. We use bison as exhibits, conservation, and ecology. We do not worry about the production. So we, with our little podunk herd of 22 animals currently, serve 3 of the 4 possible purposes. So let's talk about the exhibit herd. Early days, recommended by Audubon Master Plan, 73 donation of 1.2.0 bison. What does that mean? Anybody know? Very good. Somebody with a zoo background. So, 1.2.0 refers to 1 male, 2 female, 0 unknowns, because we're smart. It is always a little disturbing when we have to put a number in that 3rd spot. And it's just because you haven't got a good enough look at them. At that time, they were limited to what we currently call the East pasture, right along the pole out there on Buffalo Road, 45 acres, 3 animals, 45 acres. Great, 15 acres per animal. First calf was born in spring of 94 or of 74. They came in November of 73. First calf in spring of 74. Guess what one of those cows was doing before she got on the trailer? So technically, Wichita Mountains donated 4 animals to us. But here's where it gets a little confusing. You got to think about it, because chances are the bull we had was only a 2-year-old bull, the bull they gave us. He's capable of breeding, but he wasn't in a herd setting. He wasn't going to get a chance to breed. So the baby daddy of the calf in spring of 74 was from another father. So that means we actually have the genetics of an additional animal brought in. Kind of cool how it all works out. So 3 years later, the herd totaled 7, 2 bulls and 5 females, and we continue to grow. And I go year by year, all these numbers here, but that would be boring as all get out. So the early days, we had some issues. We had 45 acres. Now, quickly, the staff at the time realized that 45 acres wasn't enough. This herd's growing quick. If you look at that, when we got up to 7 and 77, then on 45 acres, you're down to 6 acres, 6.5 acres per animal. Rule of thumb is you want at least 10 acres per animal. Okay, so they were already overpopulated. So they created what we call today the Northeast pasture, which is a whopping 11 acres. And each and every one of us would love to have an extra 11 acres tacked onto the side of our property. But when you're a bison, that's not much. So we're up to 56 acres for all these animals at that time. But we realized, or my predecessors realized, that we need to be able to start managing these numbers. And this guy is not going, well, let's shoot that one, because we have a volunteer banquet to fill, or something like that. He's actually, that is a capture gun, a chemical immobilization rifle, and he's trying to get that young calf right in the middle, the orange one. And he's wearing clothes that I think last person I saw wearing that was Bill Collins. And that was last Friday. So we had, they experienced the death of their first bison death. An adult cow passed away, but she had a calf, so he had an orphan. So that was actually the orphan they're trying to get here, because they were going to try to sell it to somebody that could raise it up. Probably one of the smarter things my predecessors did on staff was that they didn't offer to raise that themselves. Because when it comes down to it, bison are great animals in that they're easy to be around if you know what you're doing, and for the most part, they're safe to be around and all that thing. And the most dangerous bison out there is the one that was hand raised and fed on a bottle, because they have no personal space boundaries. So they're right up in your grill, if you will. So they wanted to move this calf out. And despite what you can tell based upon the attire, the posture, the hairstyle, everything about this gentleman, he was not a good shot. So they never got it that way, which led to some other issues. During that time period, drought conditions had limited forage, natural water supplies were down. There is what we call Prairie Dog Pond, which is just a runoff pond, so a drought dries it up pretty easily. And we had the first animals were removed from the herd in 1978, if I remember correctly, what it says underneath there. But removing animals was a challenge, because the shooting them with a capture gun didn't work. So they had to go to catching them by hand with pens. But we didn't have pens. So they wanted to sell these surplus animals. And the city is always looking for revenue sources, and we got extra bison, so we'll sell those. We sell surplus animals today. But back in that time, they're city property. Anybody ever tried to buy anything from the city? Start now, because even the youngest of you out here may not get the sale done by the time you're done. You had to go out for bids, and you had to come up with all this stuff. And I've seen the RFP that the city put out at that point, which included that the buyer had to supply the trailer, the pens, catch them themselves. And what if you caught them? Great. If you couldn't catch them, that's on you. We'll sell them again, So this is what the first capture here. I've done this kind of thing. It's not fun. In fact, 1997 was my first chance to actually work with living bison. And it was in 2007, 10 years later, that I actually laid hands on a bison for the first time outside of a confinement setting, like in the squeeze where we got the vet there. And that was a matter of me trying to push off this bull somewhere in Peaster that the rancher was giving us some animals out of the graciousness of his heart, and almost at the price of several lives of staff members, to gather them all up and get them into a trailer. Bison don't do what you tell them to do. So anyways, they managed to get them sold off. But the purchaser had to provide the equipment, the personnel to capture and load the animals. After that, they maintained the herd at or about 10 animals all the way through 1990. Now, remember, they're working off 56 acres, 10 acres per animal, and in city math, that made sense. So we started changing things in 1997, and I won't take credit for it. I happened to be just Johnny on the spot when the changes started coming into play. Friends of the Nature Center assumed ownership of the bison herd in 1995. The reason for this is to take out all of that city bureaucracy about selling or acquiring new animals. And so much like the zoo, the animals are owned by the Zoological Society, so they can buy, sell, trade things with other zoos and stuff. We got the same deal going with the Friends owning our animals. By 1997, upon my arrival, or actually before I arrived, there were 15 animals, 2 bulls, 2 adult bulls, 5 cows, and 8 unknowns. Now, I'm not going to comment on my predecessors about their ability to sex animals. I'm going to attribute that to poor record keeping, that I could not dig out the sexes on those 8 animals. When I got here in July, there were 22 animals. So on 56 acres, again, apply your city math and you go, that's not better. So we knew we had a problem. So this is when we started really moving forward. With the help of the Friends of the Nature Center, we were able to purchase our first capture system. You may have seen it if you've been around the Nature Center for a long time. Back in the day, it sat out in the middle of the east pasture, and was a very complex system to catch them up in. And then in the solid walls here, there was a series of chutes and a tub that you could move them through that eventually led to a squeeze where the vet could actually work on them. Now, these animals came in 1973. Their first veterinary work occurred in 1998. Bison are hardy animals. They don't need a whole lot, so that's a good thing. We really had not had any injuries or anything, with one exception. In 1980, and I bet you, Bill, you probably remember what happened in 1980, that maybe some others do. You know, back in the day, during the wild, wild west there of the Nature Center, you didn't have gates. And you could come in 24/7 and you could drive right up to the bison herd any time of day. And somebody did just that, and they pulled out their rifle and they shot the bull. The bull that was donated by Wichita Mountains. So he would have been probably 2 and 74. He would have been about 8 years old. I haven't checked in a long time, but I knew it for a while there in the early 2000s that his skull and his hide were still down at the museum. I have pictures of Jim Diffley. Remember Jim? Did you know Jim? That out there skinning a bison out in the East pasture. That's really good for your attendance numbers and your bison conservation program that are out there skinning the bison. But it really started to introduce the idea of how much support we had from within the community, because a gentleman by the name of Leo Pottishman down in Granbury donated a bull, a young bull. And that was the first new genetics added to the herd. So we had that genetics of like 4 animals in 1973. 1980, we had a bull. We're up into the late 90s now. That was still the last addition genetically. We had, well, so let's just say family reunions out there for the bison. You know where I'm going. So anyways, having the handling system allowed us to start managing this stuff. So we got the first handling system in 1998. Anybody ever run in the Buffalo Boogie? The race we used to have at the Nature Center that was created by Bill's wife, BJ. That money bought our first handling system. That allowed us to increase the veterinary care, gave us the opportunity for genetic testing, because by this time, everybody knew that not all bison were quote unquote pure. Well, if you watch that documentary, it'll talk about the good nights and all that. They were doing a lot of things about crossbreeding with cattle and trying to create an animal that, in a nutshell, it comes down to either a tame or domesticated bison, not going to work, or a cow that could survive on native range that normal cattle don't. Also not going to work real well. What it created was a bunch of really ugly bison or really mean cows. We needed to find out where our bison stood. Also gave us the ability to capture and load surplus animals. So we could have our first organized surplus bison sale. One of the first sales we made was to the zoo. We sold 4 yearling bulls to the zoo. It was really nice because in 2007, they gave us 4 animals back. They kept one of ours, so we got back one of our animals, who is now an adult bull. They had swapped a couple or three bulls for 2 cows. I don't know why females are worth more than males, but the 2 cows, the females, came out of East Texas, and then they threw in, just as a bonus bison, a cut bull steer. So we didn't worry about him reproductively. But 2007 was the year of the repo bison. We'll get into that. More infrastructure we were adding. In 1999, we purchased 154 acres to the west of Buffalo Road, which is now 3 separate pastures, our south, our central, and west pastures. So we went from that 46 or 56, and we're now running about 210 acres under fence. Fence to provide 3 additional pastures. We had natural and artificial water sources there. We added a barn. Oh my God, the idea of being able to put your hay under cover. We had a barn. They called it a barn. I called it a hovel. It didn't even have 4 full legs to it, to a roof. You needed a hard hat to go gather hay. So this was a miraculous thing. We also could put equipment under it and all that kind of stuff. That came in 2003. We could now store 300 plus square bales or 50 6x6 round bales. We had rodent-proof feed storage. Wow. We used to buy our range cubes like 5 bags at a time because that was all, we had to use those that fast to keep the rats and mice from getting into them. Now we had a big bin, we could get 50 at a time. Equipment, material storage, all that kind of stuff. Wonderful piece of thing of infrastructure. And then we get the Cadillac here. We added this 25-foot gooseneck reinforced stock trailer in 2004. And I'll tell you the story why this came about, why we decided we needed this is because lo and behold, we had our first veterinary emergency. Now I'm going to admit all you gentlemen online or in person here are going to go at some point when I tell this story. It's a young bull and we were in the catch pen and he had a tussle with our big bull Dow back then. He was, in fact, in all my time there, that was our biggest bull. He was a monster and he was great. Taught me more about bison than any human being could have. And Dow got a little fed up with this young yearling bull and he just hooked him and picked him up and threw him across the pen. And that sounds bad enough. You get picked up by an animal and thrown across a pen. But somehow his horn had caught in such a way that he had created this phenomenon, which I was unacquainted with, fortunately, but I have since learned from the veterinary world, is known as a prolapsed penile sheath. Picture the penis turned inside out. From an external view, it looked bad. We immediately said, this is outside the realm of what we can handle in-house. So we called our vet, which our vet is out at Millsap Veterinary Clinic. He started with us as soon as we got the handling system. Dean Herbal out there, he's been with us for 25 plus years and all that stuff. He's great. And he's like, I can't make it out there right now. Can you bring it to me? Sure, we'll figure that out. We don't have a trailer. We don't have anything. So we start calling around. We managed to locate a horse trailer. Conceptually, okay, except think about it. What's the neat thing when you're driving behind a truck pulling a horse trailer? Horse butt sticking up out the back side of it and the tail's there blowing in the wind and stuff. They only got a half a door on them. Bison tend to jump out things like that. And we're going to go down I-20 heading to Millsap. So it was the best trailer we could find. So we took and stretched a tarp across it and put ratchet straps and sucked her down as tight as we could. Took the back way to Millsap as much as we could, which there's a lot of different ways to get to Millsap. The first time I've ever carried a rifle in a city vehicle, because just in case he got out and was running down I-20, you got to deal with it. We got him there, and Dean, bless his heart, he's an Aggie, needs blessing. And just so you know, if he was sitting right here beside me, I'd say the same thing. I'd have to explain what I meant, but I'd tell him. He gets him in the squeeze and he's just looking at it. And I'm like, what do you think, Dean? And he goes, that's a prolapsed penile sheath. Okay, write that down. Have to look that up later, just see what that is for sure. And so he reaches down, grabs this bulbous liquid-filled mass with both hands. Bare Aggie hands. They're tough, they're strong. And gave it a mighty squeeze, and it came out like you were washing your car, squeezing the sponge. Suzanne Tuttle was with me when we went, and she giggled. I went down on one knee. All these years later, I still have PTSD. but I learned a lot. Basically, that's the way you do it. And you kind of push it all back in. And he kept them for a couple of days and everything was fine. But I always pitied that poor little bull. And he never really was quite the same. So that's why we needed a trailer. So we didn't have to do that down the road again. We also got, and this seems like it wouldn't have a doggone thing to do with the bison herd, but we got a skid steer. Woohoo. 1,200-pound round bale of hay says you need heavy equipment. We had a glorified lawn tractor as our heaviest piece of equipment prior to the skid steer coming, so we could actually pick up, because it's really ridiculous to watch 3 staff members roll a bale of hay towards the bison, and the bison don't wait patiently. So the skid steer was a big step in the right direction for us. Then in 2005, we built our own handling system, utilizing the component parts of the one we had bought, but we expanded it so we can handle a much bigger number of animals. This was designed and built in-house, supported by the Friends of the Nature Center. It was based on Wichita Mountain's handling system, which they paid $600,000 for in 1996. And we built this in 2005, and we had $11,000 to work with. So we were scrounging. See all that metal pipe on there? That's old reused drill stem. We happen to have, one of my predecessors, Wayne Clark, was the ultimate scrounge. Anything laying around that might have in future use, he gathered it up and stored it at the Nature Center. And we had several 36-foot lengths of this pipe laying around, and we thought, well, that would work pretty good to do this stuff. You got to have these fences 6.5 feet high, and you need at least 5 feet solid down below. So we went to train depot down here and dug through their scrap railroad ties and pulled out the 70 best. And that's being very, very loose with the word best. Railroad ties, so that's the 5 feet up. It's 3 feet in the ground, 5 feet up. And then we had to weld on pipe up top and then the top rail along. The thing was, none of us knew how to weld. So several of us learned to weld on this project. We had a perfectly acceptable way to test our welds. If we could, we picked it up and threw it as far as we could onto the concrete in the shop. If it didn't explode, we thought, well, that's a pretty good weld. And but some of these things you couldn't do that with. So the very first time we used this, when a 1,800-pound bison's hitting it at 25 miles an hour, that's when you're testing your welds. And when you're on the other side of that gate, just praying that that gate will hold. Yeah, there's a lot of kind of juggling your pants and hoping you didn't drop anything in there, but we made it. And every year we fine tune our handling system, and we've been using it since 2005. And I'm really proud of the fact that we've never had a staff member hurt. We've never had an animal hurt by the system. The animals have been hurt by other animals, but that's just a fact of life with bison. So very important part of building our capacity to handle bison. Gave us the ability to handle more animals, ability to manage multiple herds, which came in really handy come 2007, the year of the repo bison, which is when I was in Peaster trying to get these 5 animals from a rancher out there who was graciously donating them to us. He just said, you got 5 animals here. You're more than welcome to have them, but you got to come get them. Okay, we tried that. We got them. Took us about a month, despite him telling us that he could lead them into a trailer with bread. But that didn't work. And it was as close as I've come to feeling like I was going to die, loading those animals up there. Weird thing about it is he told me, I bought them from this guy over here and he got them from somebody else. I tracked it. I figured out everything. You know who the original owners were? Us. So we sold them. They went through the bison community and came back. Kind of like my own kids at home, you know. So we had that. That was 5 animals out of Peaster. The zoo gave us those 4 that I referred to earlier. And then I got this weird phone call on a Friday afternoon. I thought, oh, it was a nice Friday, quiet. I'm going to go home early. Get home early about 4 o'clock or something, and my phone rings. Damn cell phones, and Tarrant County Sheriff on the line. I don't know about anybody else, but when you answer the phone and it says this is Tarrant County Sheriff, even if you haven't done anything, you can't help but go, oh my God. He says, I hear you know how to catch bison. Who's telling you lies like that? And you should be calling them. They're breaking the law. He goes, well, he says, gentleman up in Saginaw made an impulse buy at a livestock auction several months prior. On his way out the door, I guess it was near the register, he bought 10 bison and a bull and 8 cows and 2 calves or yearlings at the time. And he apparently he had a trucking company, and he thought, well, I'll just throw him on a truck and send him up to his property in Colorado where he had 10,000 acres or something like that. And that made a world of sense. But no, let's keep him on our 5 acres we have in Saginaw. Behind like 4-strand barbed wire fence. And so apparently, I'm surprised we didn't see this all on the news. They were getting out like daily, and he was managed to get them back in and stuff. But finally they get out, and they had been running loose for like over a month. And apparently, I don't know, anybody live in Saginaw? Nobody? Okay. Are you an impatient group of people up that way that you can't handle having bison running down your fences and chewing up your gardens and everything? But apparently they caused enough problems that the sheriffs were involved. And he talked to the owner, who said, if somebody can catch them, they can have them. I don't want them. Well, another resident up there had a little ranchette and had a couple acres fence that and then had an internal fence around inside that he stored his hay in. And he had a cowboy that went over there to get hay one day, and he finds all the bison inside the internal pen eating all of his hay. So the cowboy, doing what cowboys do, closed the gate. And so they're caught. So the sheriff's telling me, all you got to do is bring a trailer out here. There's a chute you can run them on right up into the trailer, and you can load them out. Great. This Friday afternoon, remember? And I work for the city. There's a shutdown period that comes around 5 o'clock. And so I managed to get a hold, our trailer, we had that big, beautiful 25-foot gooseneck we bought. It's sitting in Peaster trying to get this guy to lead bison into it with bread. So I called the Fort Worth herd, the Longhorn people. They owed us a favor because we let them retire some Longhorns out on our bison pastures before we put bison on them. And so I said, can I borrow a trailer? Sure. Can I borrow a truck to pull that trailer? Okay. So I have to run down to the stockyards, pick up a truck and trailer, come back out, pick up my crew, which it's a Friday. We're a 7-day-a-week operation. And so I don't have all my crew there because we kind of split our weekend. So I have half my crew. And I'll just say it wasn't my A team. We go out there, we get out there and we see the situation. Yes, indeed, the bison are all caught up in this fence that is designed to keep goats in. And there is a loading chute designed to load said goats. We backed our trailer up to it. got all set up. By this time, we've kind of attracted a crowd. The cowboy community of Saginaw was all coming out to see us, but we're going to put them to use. So we got this chute that's got 4-foot fence. I have 6-foot bison. And so I lined the chute with cowboys going like this. And fortunately, there was another little internal fence that I cut off half the herd and got them out there, and so I could run half of them, 5 of them up that chute. And I run them up there, and I got my guy up there, and it's got an internal gate on the inside of the trailer and got a rope on it, and he's supposed to slam it as soon as they all get, run past him. Well, his reflexes weren't what they used to be, so he missed them. And so the bison, what they did, turn around and like, well, that was fun. Let's go back the other way down that chute. And so they come down, and I close the gate. I have the exact same gate that my bloodhounds go over it to keep bison in place. So I did, by chance, a little while prior, I had purchased my first hot shot. Everybody know what a hot shot is? Cattle prod, if you will. Never used it, never had any intention to use it, but I thought this is a good time to have it handy. I found out what it'll do to a bison. And I had a cow coming down, lead cow. She's coming right down, barreling down on me in my little 4-foot chain link gate. And I stuck it, I'll just be honest, I stuck it right in her forehead. And she stopped. The other animals did not. They came up behind, and they just were stacking up like a semi-collisions on the highway up on top of each other. Now, as I said, these are 6 feet tall bison on a 4-foot fence, but now they're stacking on top of each other. These cowboys just bailed. Last seen halfway to North Richland Hills running. Got them turned around. Got them back up in the trailer, caught those, ran the other ones up there, and then had the most interesting ride through Saginaw. Seemed like a lot of stoplights in Saginaw. We hit every one of them. And that trailer's just a rocking back there. We're in a city vehicle. So we brought them all back here. Turned out we got our herd size up to, including all those, 31 animals. We ended up selling some because we could do the genetic testing, which I brought up, but I haven't addressed yet. When we first tested our animals, we found that ours are pure within the limits of current testing technology. And that little disclaimer is a requirement put out there by the geneticists that do this work, because they're always finding new markers to look for and things, and ours could all of a sudden pop up being half Guernsey or something at any time. But so ours are pure, adds value to them from that conservation herd standpoint. The zoo bison, the one that came from us, obviously was pure. The 2 cows that they got from East Texas miraculously were pure. And when they look at the genetics, they can look to see where they came from. And if you watch that documentary, they'll talk about the founding herds and Wind River and Yellowstone and all this stuff. And we found that our genetics now, including these 2 cows that came from East Texas, represented all the bison in the country, just about. And then the Peaster herd, which I backtracked their ownership and found they came from us, so those were pure. And then we had the Saginaw group, or as we called them, our urban bison. We ended up only getting 9. That the bull that the guy had purchased was nowhere to be found, and I imagine he's hanging on somebody's wall or laying in a ditch somewhere in Saginaw. I'm actually glad, because we now had 3 adult bulls on property already. I didn't need another one, but brought in those 9. 6 of those 9 tested pure. So we only had 3 to move on. So, which then by selling them off, and you advertise them as what I call polluted bison, hybrids, if you will, but that income from that goes to feed and take care of all the others. So that's one of the things that we don't really get into here is that we took bison from being a real cost sink at the nature center to pretty much a self-sustaining endeavor. We increased safety for animals and people. This is Santana. This is the bull we sold to the zoo as a yearling, and this is the day we got him back. You should have seen when he got released into a pasture with knee-high grass after being in a setting like that. It was pretty neat. So here's our additions to the genetics. From 74 to 2003, we had that one bull after the bull got shot. Thank you, Leo Pottishman. 2004, we actually purchased an animal from the Vermejo Ranch, one of Ted Turner's bison herd. In fact, we purchased one of the last bulls that he sold because when he opened Montana's, he kind of needed all of his bison. So we were one of the last places to get one that got outside of Vermejo Park. And then in 2007, all the ones that we got that I just described. So if you look at all those herd types, we're everything but production. How do we manage them? Population management. We do sex education classes. We offer. We do have some ability to limit or increase reproduction. We can split our herds and have a breeding and a non-breeding herd. One thing that we do, unlike most people that have bison, is that we let the cows wean the calves. And most people are pulling the calves so they can get that cow right back into cycling and produce another calf. We leave them on. I like to think of it as my gift to those cows, those females. You only have to have a baby every other year. So that limits us on the number of animals we have by leaving those calves on there. And so we have, let's see, this is a 23 odd numbered year. We only had 3 calves. Next year, we'll probably have 5 or 6 because of the way they cycle and just where everybody lies in that. So we're not having to boost it up. We also just recently sold our breeder bull and got in, actually, it's kind of like the Bachelor. We got 5 yearling bulls to choose from. And we're like, everybody's just standing around looking at them and they got to like perform a little bit. And which one are we going to keep? Give a rose to. And so we're going to select one out of that group and keep him. And because he's so young, he probably won't be successful in breeding for at least another year. Pardon? Well, Maverick is older than they are. And the other thing is he may be successful on some, but not all, like a mature bull is. So then we're trying to limit our increase in reproduction over the next few years with a young bull. We have explored the idea of doing breeding loans to other herds, which would allow us to maneuver our genetics around, reducing herd size, but we would still maintain access to the reproductive product of those animals. We've got our veterinary management. We now can tell what animal's what. We have microchips. They have ear tags that have RFD chips in them there. We've got tattoos. We've got all kinds of things. And then we still have our house names that we use to be able to talk about them, because talking about Bison cow 147986, nobody does that. We like to give them names that have meaning to us. Some of my favorite names is we had 2 cows we could not tell apart back in about 2007. They were actually Peaster animals. 2 cows, couldn't tell them apart. So we called one Sarah Palin, one Tina Fey. This allows us to, having the veterinary management allows us to provide all the necessary vaccination, wormers, and all those things, and be able to actually keep up on current trends in veterinary management. So that is working out well. This is actually one of the so-called polluted Saginaw cows here. You can see just looking at her, she doesn't look quite right, does she, from a bison standpoint? If her neck, if her head was turned facing out there, you'd see she's got a much longer neck. That's the key thing I see in them. But this allows us to do the genetic management, ability to identify and relocate hybrids and to maintain herd purity. Our bison management going into pastures. We have the 5 pastures totaling 210 acres. We're trying to right now to get the friends to support basically doubling in size of the northeast pasture and adding what we call a northwest pasture, which will add another about 60 acres to it, which will make it a lot better. And it's the drought has really shown us the need for this. Rotational grazing plans. We rotate not based on the calendar, we rotate based on the grass. Although if you got this extended drought we just went through in the heat and everything, it's like there's no grass, just where do you want to stir up dust most? But one thing that we've been able to do is we've purchased haying equipment. So we manage some of our prairie sites by cutting and baling hay, which then we turn around to be able to feed our bison. So it's kind of part of that ecological management. The bison may not get out on that ground, but they're helping manage that area. So there's the plan to add. You can tell you today we're trying to add 2 pastures, totaling about 60 acres. 2009, when this presentation was first given, we were still trying to do that. We also, on the exhibit side of things, educating and enrolling the community, and our mission statement, volunteer involvement. We use our Natural Guard to help with a lot of our bison related activities. We provide internships for university students that get hands-on type stuff. We also typically invite wildlife disease class from Tarleton to come out when we have our vet work done. So that gives these kids, I'm sorry, I learned at TCU teaching, you're not supposed to call them kids, they're called revenue units. So you bring out the revenue units and you give them hands-on experience in dealing with an animal they probably have not seen before up close. And then of course, all the public programming we have that deals with bison. That's where we've come from. That's where we're at. And this is where we're going. Real proud of our bison program. We just last week hosted a nationwide team of consultants that offer advice to nature centers. They were ecstatic with our bison program. They were totally fascinated by having as much land as we have, because like land we don't use, 3 times bigger than their entire, some of them's the entire nature centers. So it's a great place to see and do and all those kind of things. Happy to address any questions you might have.
In watching one of the shows about bison, they run by rocking back and forth on their front. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Yeah,
well, it depends on, it's like a horse. Every pace they have has a different motion of the legs.
Okay.
So you're getting into their full-blown gallop where it's reach and pull. They also will do thing that you most normally see associated with like springbok and Thompson gazelles in Africa, where they call it pronking, where they're going straight up in the air. And that's all like predator evasion, because, you know, lion for a gazelle leaps for here, and much like an armadillo leaps up to not be where the predator is going to land. Bison do the same. Yes.
So I was out there last week with the National Guard, and you're on the gate or like driving out to do some fence clearing, and they associate the sound of the engine with food, so they all started pouring through the. There's like 20 of them that just shot out of the woods.
Mm-hmm.
They say, yeah, they stopped when they got to the fence, luckily. But what is it that stops them? Like, why? What is stopping them?
Could you repeat it for the?
Yeah, he was out at the nature center working with the Natural Guard volunteers, and they were working in West Pasture, I imagine, and the riding on the ATVs, and the bison respond to the sound of motors and engines. And so he's asking why they come rushing up, but then make a sudden stop. Without trying to be insulting to the intelligence of bison, they're very cow-like. And I think it's like everything's working to say, we need to get over there because there sounds like there's food over there, until their head catches up with everything else and go, oh, I don't see any food. Or, yeah, I have, that makes me tell a story. When my kids grew up at the nature center, you know, when I first came here, my youngest was 3, and my middle daughter was second grade or first grade, so 6. And he used to come to work with me all the time. And back when we just had the 2 pastures on the east side of the road, our hay was in that hovel thing out there, kind of out towards Oakmont Trail, if you know that.
Yeah.
But we used to go out there with a like S10 pickup and throw a few bales of hay in and a couple bags of cubes. And you went in a kind of a back door into the east pasture, and the bison would all be gathered up there, and you'd try to slide in past them. And then you got in the truck and you just stomped on it and ran through the woods as fast as you could to try to get some distance ahead so you could get some food on the ground before they caught up to you, because they definitely knew there's food there. Well, my daughter, I don't know, I think she probably was 7 at this point. She's sitting riding in the bed of the truck, and I didn't think much about it. She grew up doing that stuff, and wasn't until Halloween time that her second grade teacher said, here, I want to show you her paper she did. And it was supposed to write a thing about your scariest experience. And it was kind of a fill in the blank kind of thing. And the line I remember the most was, and what did you do? And she wrote, I sat as still as a stump. So yeah, I guess she probably has PTSD too. Anything else? Well, thank you all. Come on out to the Nature Center.
Thank you, Rob. We got several comments from the Zoomers. Ann Knudsen says she's missed your presentation, so she's glad to see you again. Teresa Posani says, my granddaughter and I are on the hay rides this week, and the granddaughter's so excited. So that's a lot of fun. And I never knew about the 1970s that the Audubon Society was recommending bison herds multiple places. So I'm glad they're there, but of course I don't have to take care of them.
Strangely enough, the bison on the Nature Center are not the first bison put on that property. And I'm not talking about, 1800 stuff, because in the 60s, before the Nature Center fully evolved, some of you probably are aware that the Refuge Service Center was the New Liberty Baptist Mission Alcohol Rehabilitation Center. And they had arrangements with a lot of different organizations, but one of the things they did is they kept surplus animals for the zoo. And the zoo had bison out there on Canyon Ridge Mesa in the 60s.
Okay, so and again, I hope you all heard that online, but Rob was telling us about how the Fort Worth Zoo had bison in the 1960s and put them on the Nature Center property before it was Nature Center. So thank you. Yes, I think there'll be a lot of people Googling several items that you discussed, because we've never heard of that before. I know I have at least one other announcement I should make. Debbie, I'm going to ask you to wave your hand again. This is Debbie Stilson, our membership director through the end of this year. If you have misplaced or lost a name badge, like this imaginary one you're seeing on me right now, which I know I brought home from the annual meeting, contact Debbie, or you can email her at membership@ctmn.org, or you can walk up to her here before she gets away and make sure your name is spelled correctly if you need a replacement. And it may be a few months because it's quite a long turnaround, but we'll do the best we can to get you a name tag. And I think what I said last year was you get one free, but if this is like your fourth or fifth name tag, we're going to ask you to, pony up the $4 for that. So it was a big cost. And I'm going to ask again, everybody, please sign in. We'll have if someone will bring me the tickets, I'll read the numbers off the tickets. And I'm going to adjourn the meeting. Y'all that are here, please stick around if you'd like to. And maybe Rob has another story or two. Who knows? You can. Thank you again, Rob. We're honored. We're honored.